Imagine this. A squad of mercenaries from a murky private security world marches on a nation's capital. They barely meet a whisper of resistance as they approach it. Then suddenly gunshots pierce the air, plunging an entire nation into uncertainty and terror. No, we're not talking about Prigozhin and his Wagner group, but about a different group of mercenaries. Namely those that on July 7th, 2021 killed Haiti's president Jovenel Moïse. This tells us something important about Prigozhin's mutiny. His march on Moscow posed the biggest challenge yet to Putin's rule, and awoke the world to the danger of mercenary groups. He was the stark example of their power, but not an isolated one.
Russia is not a one-off exception.
Things are going to get rougher and wilder.
Private warfare is coming back into the 21st century as it has always been in human history.
So who are these mercenary groups? And why are they making a comeback?
By many people's definition, I am a mercenary.
Salmon Man is one of the most famous mercenaries alive. He is alleged to have fought in the Bougainville Uprising in Papua New Guinea, the Sierra Leone Civil War, and the Equatorial Guinea coup d'etat.
I tried to become an oil and gas man in Angola, and our company was actually attacked by the rebels. This was in January 93. So I just said to my boss, why don't we fight back? Why do we have to accept this? And to cut a long story short, that led to the contract between the Angolan government and Executive Outcomes.
We'll get to Executive Outcomes later on. But for now, all you need to know is that the company enlisted private soldiers to fight in the Angolan Civil War. That brings us straight to what a mercenary is.
The mercenary word is pejorative and is used in a sort of a wild way that isn't necessarily always appropriate.
Scholars lean toward private military contractors, or PMC, but for the purpose of this video, we'll use a more colloquial language. And by this definition, mercenaries have been around for as long as private citizens have been willing to fight for money.
There've always been, adventurous people willing to do crazy things for money. I mean, that's not new.
All of military history had a huge mercenary component.
Sean McFate has been warning about the threat of hired guns for the last decade. He says the mercenaries have been a constant throughout history. Barbarian nations were integrated into Roman troops to conquer other barbarian nations. By the Middle Ages, mercenaries were trained men without a lord who sold their services to the highest bidder. But after the Peace of Westphalia, nation-states started to invest in a standing army, and in the West, mercenaries were gradually outlawed.
They got pushed underground. They were used in covert ways during the Cold War, by USSR and by the United States and others. But they were always in the shadows.
However, as the frost of the Cold War began to melt, mercenaries emerged back into the light. In 1993, Executive Outcomes played a key role in the war in Angola, but critics accused it of predatory capitalism for extracting resources from a troubled state.
A lot of people reacted rather similarly to how people were reacting, let's say, a few months ago about Wagner. Oh my God, the world's changed. It will be like the Italy of the Renaissance. So everyone digs out their history books and tries to work out how a world works when soldiering and war fighting becomes a business. And Executive Outcomes kind of broke the mold.
phase came in the 2000 with Blackwater, whose employees killed 17 Iraqi civilians in the Nisour Square massacre.
The United States kind of kicked it into gear with the Iraq War. Basically, the United States did not have enough volunteers to join our all-volunteer army, and they could either impose a national draft like Vietnam, which would be catastrophic. They could leave and say we were defeated, or they can hire contractors to make up the difference. When the US pulled out of Iraq and Afghanistan, it left a large labor pool, and a lot of them sought new contracts and working for whomever.
And finally Wagner, which had long been active in Africa but truly emerged with the war in Ukraine.
And it's not just Russia, we're seeing Latin American mercenaries assassinate the president of Haiti. We're seeing the CEO of Nissan, who is under house arrest for corruption in Tokyo, was sprung out of jail by a mercenary. So every time you see a successful mercenary operation, people around the world who have lots of money are getting ideas. CEOs are saying, I have a get out of jail free card if I just know a good mercenary.
So why are mercenaries reemerging?
The last 200 years were the exception and not the rule.
As the world shifts away from its previous bipolar structure, it also seems to revert to age-old practices.
After the Cold War, the international system became much more chaotic.
Things are going to get rougher and wilder, and there's going to be a lot of people running around doing stuff for money.
On top of that, there's one more factor that's resurrecting mercenary groups: plausible deniability.
This is the name of the game today about mercenaries, is that we live in an information age. And in an information age, information matters more than raw firepower. And if you want to wage war and get away with it, you wage it in secret. Because, if something bad happened, you can totally disavow mercenaries. You can't disavow your special operations troops or your own troops. And we saw this happen in 2018 in February. The Wagner Group in eastern Syria went up against American special forces. And America killed more Russians that night than any night during the Cold War. We killed about 300. Now, the reason it didn't go to World War III is because both Moscow and Washington invoked plausible deniability. They both said, these are just mercenaries. These are not Russian soldiers. We don't have to escalate up. When a force is privatized, it changes who's a superpower. So suddenly we're getting into a world where the super rich can become superpowers. Say by middle of this century, ExxonMobil can have its own army. Elon Musk can have its own army.
Prigozhin's march on Moscow was stopped, but recent assassinations, covert campaigns, and all-out wars show that mercenaries are on the rise, and we are not ready for it.
The danger of mercenaries is not just the mercenaries, it's our own strategic ineptitude and thinking. So we need to get smart on how to do this, and we have history. It's an imperfect teacher, but it's the only teacher we have. In some ways, mercenary warfare, as awful as it sounds, you can also buy off mercenaries, which is a lot more humane than shooting everybody. So, as a grim upshot, I would leave your viewers with that.